Think Lauren Sánchez just got lucky marrying the world's richest man? Then you don't know how she masterfully managed the lives of her 3 kids from different fathers over 2 decades, creating the perfect picture for a future billionaire. When 55-year-old Lauren Sánchez walked down the aisle in Venice accompanied by her 2 sons, few people thought about the fact that each of her 3 children has their own dramatic story. This isn't just a tale about motherhood, it's a masterclass in how a woman with 3 kids from different partners managed not only to keep her reputation intact, but became the most desirable bride for a man who can afford anything. In February 2001, 31-year-old Lauren Sánchez gave birth to a son with Tony Gonzalez, one of the best tight ends in NFL history. At the time, it seemed like the perfect match. She was an ambitious television journalist. He was a Kansas City Chiefs star with multi-million-dollar contracts. But a year later, it was all over. Nobody gave an official reason for the breakup, though Tony hinted at relationship difficulties in an interview. When you're a kid growing up, you think you'll get married and have kids, but when you get older, you realize how hard it is to do that successfully. Lauren turned a potential scandal into an exemplary co-parenting story. By her own admission, it took 5 years of hard work, but the result exceeded expectations. Today, Tony Gonzalez and his wife Toby are, according to Lauren, her best friends. They celebrate Thanksgiving together, vacation on yachts, and were invited to Lauren's wedding with Jeff Bezos. Nico calls himself the luckiest boy in the world because he can have both parents at holidays even though they're not married. In 2024, 23-year-old Nico debuted on the Dolce & Gabbana runway during Milan Fashion Week. Lauren and Jeff Bezos sat in the front row, watching his steps on the catwalk. Coincidence? Hardly. When your mum has connections with one of the most influential people on the planet, doors open by themselves. That same year, Nico graduated from the University of Colorado Boulder with a degree in political science. Lauren posted an emotional message with his childhood photo, but nobody mentioned who paid for his education. When Nico supported the Blue Origin rocket launch, writing "Congrats to the Blue Origin team," it became clear he's no longer just a journalist's son, but part of Bezos's space empire. If Nico's story is a masterclass in co-parenting, then Evan's story is a lesson in how to protect a child from public scandal. Evan was born on June 22, 2006, when Lauren was married to Patrick Whitesell, one of Hollywood's most powerful agents. Whitesell managed the careers of Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, Hugh Jackman, people whose names are worth millions. Evan grew up in a world where Oscar nominees were party neighbors and family vacations happened at the most expensive resorts. But in 2019, when Evan was 13, his world turned upside down. The National Enquirer published details of his mother's affair with Jeff Bezos, including intimate messages and photos. Imagine what a teenager felt when the whole country was discussing his mother's personal life. Lauren did what every smart mother does. She protected her children from the media circus as much as possible. Evan practically disappeared from her social media. When she did post his photos, his face was always hidden or turned away. This wasn't accidental, it was strategy. The divorce from Whitesell went surprisingly quickly and quietly. Everything was resolved in 6 months thanks to the prenup they signed in 2005. Joint custody of the children, property division according to a pre-agreed scheme, no public fights or dirty details. Now, 18-year-old Evan is studying at the University of Miami, majoring in business. Lauren recently posted an emotional message about how hard it was to let her son go to college after 18 years of early mornings, late-night snacks and family dinners. But interestingly, who's paying for his $60,000 a year education? The most intriguing thing is that Evan, like his mom, got into helicopter piloting. Lauren shared a video of his first solo flight with the caption, quote, "There's a special kind of trust that comes when you watch your kid take off on their own for the first time." But isn't it strange that the son chose exactly the profession that brought his mother acquaintance with a space mogul? The most mysterious of Lauren's 3 children is 17-year-old Ella, born in January 2008. She's the youngest, but perhaps the most independent of all. Ella grew up in the shadow of 2 older brothers but always went her own way. When asked to be maid of honor at her mother's wedding to Bezos, she did something unexpected. She refused a traditional dress in favor of a Dolce & Gabbana suit. Ella's original. "She beats to her own drum," Lauren told Vogue. "She had never had a fitting before, and she loved it. She's going to look amazing." This seems like a sweet mother's comment, but reads as something more like a description of a girl who at 17 knows what she wants and how to get it. Ella, like her brothers, learned to pilot, but unlike them, she carefully avoids publicity. Lauren rarely posts her photos, and when she does, her daughter's face is usually not visible. On her 16th birthday in January 2024, Ella got only one post from her mother with an archived photo and a short caption. But the most interesting thing about Ella's story isn't what she does, but what she doesn't do. She doesn't seek attention, doesn't try to become a social media star, doesn't use her mother's fame. In a world where celebrity kids usually crave their own fame, Ella chooses silence and privacy. The most brilliant thing about Lauren's approach to motherhood is how she managed to unite children from different fathers into one team. "We're the Brady Bunch," she jokes, referring to the blended family with Jeff, who has 4 children from his previous marriage. But this isn't just a cute metaphor. It's the result of years of work to ensure the children don't feel divided in their loyalty to different fathers. Nico maintains relationships with both his biological father and stepfather. Evan and Ella have joint custody with their biological father, but have also accepted Bezos as part of the family. At the Venice wedding, this became obvious. Nico and Evan walked their mother down the aisle, symbolically handing her over to her new husband. Ella became the maid of honor, showing her blessing of the union, and Tony Gonzalez and his wife sat among the guests, celebrating with everyone. This didn't happen by itself. Behind the scenes of this idyll are years of negotiations, compromises, and wise decisions. Lauren learned to balance between the children's needs, former partner's wishes, and her own ambitions. The result: children who aren't ashamed of their complicated family tree, but take advantage of all its benefits. The most provocative question in Lauren's children's story is how much their upbringing was a strategic decision versus natural maternal instinct. Think about it. A woman with 3 children from different men usually isn't considered an ideal partner for a conservative billionaire. But Lauren managed to turn what could have been a disadvantage into her greatest advantage. Her children became living proof of her ability to manage complex relationships, maintain loyalty, and create stability even in chaotic situations. When Bezos saw how she interacted with former partners, how her children respected her, and how she balanced career and motherhood, he saw not a problem but a solution. Nico, who easily moves between the worlds of sports, fashion, and space technology. Evan, who inherited his mother's love of aviation and his father's business sense. Ella, who at 17 already knows the value of privacy and independence. These aren't just children, they're future ambassadors of the Bezos dynasty. While the world was fascinated by Lauren and Jeff's romantic story, few thought about how 3 teenagers and young adults experienced this transformation. After all, transitioning from a journalist's life to billionaire wife status isn't a fairy tale, but a complex psychological process for the whole family. Evan and Ella were particularly vulnerable during the 2019 scandal. Teenage years are the worst time for your mum to become the main tabloid topic. Friends at school, social media comments, constant stares, all of this could have broken any child. But Lauren did something brilliant. She didn't try to hide the situation from the children, but she didn't immerse them in details either. Instead, she focused their attention on future opportunities. Evan suddenly got access to the best flight instructors. Ella started attending exclusive art workshops. Nico got internships at leading companies. This isn't bribery, it's a reorientation strategy. Instead of children thinking about what they're losing, stability, privacy, she showed them what they could gain. The most impressive aspect of Lauren's story is how she managed to maintain positive relationships with all her children's fathers, even after becoming Bezos's wife. This requires incredible diplomatic skills. Tony Gonzalez could have been jealous of his former lover's new husband's wealth. Instead, he publicly celebrates their relationship and was even a guest at the wedding. This didn't happen by accident. Behind the scenes, Lauren spent years building bridges of trust, demonstrating that new relationships wouldn't change her attitude toward Nico or cooperation with his father. Patrick Whitesell could have used the children as weapons in the divorce process, especially given the circumstances of their breakup. But the divorce went so quietly and quickly that even the Hollywood press didn't have time to spin up a scandal. This indicates serious behind-the-scenes negotiations and possibly compensations that nobody talks about publicly. And Jeff Bezos, a man accustomed to controlling everything around him, accepted not only Lauren, but all the baggage of her past, including regular communication with her two former partners. This shows that Lauren managed to present this situation not as a problem, but as proof of her abilities to manage complex relationships. One of the most intriguing questions in this story is financial. Nico's education at the University of Colorado costs about $55,000 a year. Evan's education at the University of Miami is approximately $60,000 annually. Ella's private school in Los Angeles is another $40,000 annually. Officially, Lauren and her former partners divided financial responsibilities according to custody agreements. But reality is probably more complex. When your mum marries someone whose fortune is valued at $200 billion, questions about school fees become laughable. Interestingly, all three children suddenly started pursuing expensive hobbies: modeling, aviation, art. These aren't activities you can afford on a journalist's salary. But when you have access to Bezos's resources, the limits of possibility disappear. The most interesting thing is how this affects relationships with biological fathers. Tony Gonzalez, despite his successful NFL career, never had the resources to pay for his son's Dolce & Gabbana runway debut. Patrick Whitesell, despite his Hollywood status, can't compete with Bezos's space budget for children's education. How does Lauren manage this delicate situation? How does she convince former partners that their role as fathers isn't diminished by the new husband's financial might? Each of Lauren's three children demonstrates unique ways of adapting to their unusual life, and these strategies reveal a lot about their personalities and future ambitions. Nico chose the path of public activity, but with caution. His Instagram is carefully curated enough content to show a successful life, but not so much as to become a target for criticism. He positions himself as an independent personality model, university graduate, not just as a billionaire's stepson. Evan chose the opposite strategy, almost complete privacy. At 18, he's practically invisible on his mother's social media, and he either doesn't have his own accounts or they're strictly private. This could indicate a desire to live a normal life, or an awareness that publicity would bring more problems than advantages. Ella, the youngest, demonstrates the most complex behavior. She simultaneously rebels, suit, instead of dress at the wedding, and complies, agreeing to be maid of honor. This is classic teenage behavior, but in the context of their life, it takes on additional shades. Isn't her choice of a suit a way to assert her own identity in a situation where everything around is controlled? Now that Lauren and Jeff's marriage is officially registered, her children automatically become part of one of the world's most influential families. But the status of a billionaire's stepchildren brings not only advantages, but also the pressure of expectations. Nico, the oldest, is already showing understanding of his new opportunities. His interest in Blue Origin doesn't seem accidental. Perhaps he's considering the space industry as his future career field. The modeling experience at Dolce & Gabbana might not just be a one-time experiment, but part of a personal branding strategy. Evan, who studies business and is passionate about aviation, is perfectly suited for a role in Bezos's empire. Blue Origin needs people who understand both the technical aspects of spaceflight and business logic. Isn't Lauren preparing him for a future leadership role in his stepfather's company? Ella, despite her young age, is already showing political wisdom and understanding of privacy's value. These qualities will be invaluable if she decides to play an active role in the Bezos family's philanthropic projects, or even in politics. Behind all this beautiful story lie questions that have no public answers. What do the children feel when their private life becomes the subject of public discussion? How do they cope with the pressure of being perfect children of one of the world's most famous couples? Nico was born when his mum was a simple journalist. Now he's the stepson of the planet's richest person. Such transformation can cause an identity crisis. Who is he really? The son of a talented woman who achieved success through her own efforts, or a product of the privileges that wealth provides? Evan and Ella experienced family breakdown during the most formative years of their lives. Even if the divorce went civilly, the emotional impact on children can't be completely controlled. How will this affect their future understanding of love, loyalty, family values? And all three children now live under constant media and public scrutiny. Every action they take could become news headlines, every mistake a reason for criticism not only of themselves, but of their mother and stepfather. Now that Lauren has officially become Mrs. Bezos, her children have automatically entered the circle of heirs to one of the largest fortunes in human history. But what does this mean for them? Nico is already demonstrating interest in his stepfather's business, publicly supporting Blue Origin. Evan studies business and does aviation, the perfect combination for a future space company leader. Ella, despite her young age, already shows political wisdom, avoiding unnecessary attention. But are they ready for this responsibility? Bezos's fortune isn't just money, it's a global empire that affects millions of people. The next generation is expected not only to preserve this wealth, but to use it to solve global problems. The Bezos Earth Fund, co-led by Lauren, has a $10 billion budget to fight climate change. Blue Origin claims leadership in commercial space exploration. Amazon influences global trade and technology. Is this coincidence or the result of Lauren's long-term planning? We may never know the truth. But one thing is clear: this woman taught her children not just to survive in the world of big money and complex relationships, but to thrive in it. Behind the perfect picture that Lauren presents lies the question of price. How much did it cost to maintain reputation during the Bezos scandal? How much effort was needed to convince the children that their lives would change for the better? Evan and Ella experienced their parents' divorce at the most difficult teenage age, when identity is forming. Nico, as an adult, watched his mother change partners, each time adapting to new circumstances. Didn't this affect their understanding of relationships and love? Lauren masterfully avoids these questions in public interviews, focusing on positive moments. But even in her stories, details slip through. 5 years to establish relationships with Tony, complex custody negotiations, the need to protect children from media. The story of Lauren Sanchez's children is more than a tale about motherhood. It's a lesson in how to turn personal challenges into professional advantages, how to preserve family in an era of public scandals, and how to prepare the next generation for life at the top of the world. The main lesson that can be drawn from this story is the importance of long-term thinking. Lauren didn't just react to circumstances, she shaped them. Every decision about the children, from choosing schools to managing relationships with former partners, was part of a bigger strategy. Today, Nico, Evan, and Ella aren't just children of a journalist who married well. They're future leaders, prepared for life in a world of limitless opportunities and responsibilities. Will they be able to live up to expectations? Time will tell. And most importantly, this is proof that sometimes the best investments aren't stocks or real estate, but relationships with people who will be there when everything else disappears. Lauren invested 20 years of her life in her children, and now these investments are paying dividends not only to her, but to the entire new Bezos dynasty.